On today's show, we sit down with Jeremy Booth, the CEO, President of Baseball Operations for the Future Stars Series and Program 15. We talk about the environment in which he grew up. We talk about his playing days, his youth, high school, college, and pro days. We talk about the world of scouting, the future of the game, and much more.
Welcome to another episode of the Baseball Awakening Podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered, unsexy side of player development. Get ready for some knowledge bombs with your host, Geoff Rottmayer.
Welcome to the Baseball Awakening Podcast. I'm Geoff Rottmayer. Today, we are sitting down with Jeremy Booth, CEO, President of Baseball Operations for the Future Star Series and Program 15. Jeremy, how are you, sir?
Jeff, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. Listen, I've been a follower of yours for quite some time on Twitter, and your Twitter handle is going to be the _ Jeremy Booth, as well as your Program 15 and your Future Star Series, both of which you had. And I want to get into all that, but let's just kind of start with your youth days and your playing days. So kind of tell us a little bit about your youth days playing some baseball.
Growing up in Southern California, it was definitely a baseball household. I kind of had a little bit of a charmed existence. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. My father, he grew up in inner city Los Angeles, and, he was done at school at UCLA. He went to law school. And about that time he was getting out of law school, there were some friends of his he had that had turned into some pretty good baseball players in the big leagues and needed an agent. And they kind of reached out to him and asked him to help them because, the trust factor, right? The trust factor in the relationships growing up.
Right.
And so my dad did that. What transpired from there forward was, me growing up essentially in major league clubhouses and the beginning of a journey that started with a group of baseball players that were headlined by guys like Darryl Strawberry and Eric Davis and the late Chris Brown and eventually Barry Larkin and Frank Thomas and Royce Clayton. And there was something they used to do every year called the program. There's actually a documentary that came out a few years ago on Amazon. Now it's on Amazon, called Harvard Park. And that's what it was about. Well, anyway, these guys would get together every spring before camp, and they'd work out, and they would have the structured workouts, and they'd condition, and they'd hit, and they'd throw, and pitchers would get their stuff, their work in, and it was much brotherhood, very much, always guy, right, accountability oriented, and I was the youngest one. I was every day at 1 o'clock when classes were done, and getting out and shagging fly balls. And it was a rite of passage almost, where it kind of stayed with me to kind of pay forward what they had set up. And I never forget the first day I took BP. I was 12 years old. I was never allowed to hit before. I was 12 years old, and they said, "Hey man, get your bat." I always took my bat just in case, right? And say, "Hey, get your bat." And the entire program stayed out there and shagged for me. And it was unbelievable. When I was done, they went and they gave me some pointers on hitting, and that was kind of my upbringing. It happened pretty consistently. Flash forward through high school, I had a pretty good high school career, was All-American a couple times, et cetera, et cetera. Well, these guys at that time had left the inner city Los Angeles to work out, and they went to a place called Chevy Hills Park. Well, I went to Beverly Hills High School, and Chevy Hills Park was 1.5 miles from my high school. And they went there and they worked out every morning till I was done. We went over there and practiced in the afternoon, and they kind of made sure our practice was done, and then Chris Brown used to drive me home. And so that upbringing kind of stayed with me. That was the existence that I had, where, my first kangaroo court was experienced with those guys in high school. And my first, even the year when they didn't have a place to work out before Chevy Hills Park, they worked out at Beverly Hills High. And it was just very much they pay it forward, look after you, right lessons in baseball upbringing. And that transitioned into college and eventually a minor league career, and then all the way for the last about 10 years, and then all the way into scouting, where I started out as an area scout with the Twins and the Brewers. Was fortunate to have some good players and sign some big leaguers. Moved up into cross-checking and consulting anywhere from some pro work and special assignment work and seeing our affiliates and, of course, doing the regions that I was assigned to, and even Latin America stuff. I left them in 2015 and decided to do something different and started Program 15, which is of course, become the New Balance Baseball Superstar Series.
That's cool. Yeah, and that's quite a path of which I'd like to get into. But let's just go back to when you were a kid and you were hanging out with these big league guys. As a young kid, what's that like? You're hanging around the best of the best, just hanging out, and you're getting to see how they work, how they talk, how they go about their business. How does this help you being able to watch that every single day?
It's at the time you don't understand it because they're just like your uncles.
Right.
These guys are family. There was my dad had a barbecue one time, and the entire program was over there dunking on my backyard basketball court. That's just what it was. It was just that group, and I was the youngest. Now, as you get older, you begin to appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think the first time I kind of realized where I was at, and the fortunate, nature of that upbringing was I was in high school, and I saw how my teammates reacted to these guys.
Yeah.
And I saw how, they reacted to me in a way that was very, like they're a family. They took care of me. There was a different level of accountability for me. And look, these guys were such great people. They extended themselves to the teammates, and, they were there for those kids and this and that. But it was a different situation with me because I was one of them. And
right.
As I got older and realized who they were, it actually gave me more drive to succeed. I didn't want to let them down. I wanted to be able to carry that forward and pay that lineage there. But the advantages I got, from things like how to pick the ball up and how to use your lower half and how to hit in certain zones and how to change your swing even at an early age to be able to adjust in certain parts, based on the situation or the ballpark, which is all those things were ingrained in me from the time it was an early age. It was an unbelievable advantage, and it certainly carried over into the path as a professional.
That's awesome. So whenever you really started to kind of, understand this during your high school days, at this time you've had X amount of years training with these guys, seeing how they go about their work. What was the dynamic like in high school with the other guys on the team, being around you and watching you go about your business?
The dynamic was one that I wish I could say I knew better. I just kind of did my own thing because that's what I was taught. These guys taught me lessons of keeping your head down. They told me to embrace the things that I had done, but never be satisfied. They told me to take my approach that there was always a higher goal. They taught me that high school baseball was part of the path and college baseball was part of the path if need be, but that's all it was part of the path. And that it wasn't the end game. So that kind of mentality, the appreciation for the game, the appreciation of what it was really something that I just focused on. I didn't pay attention to what other guys were doing much, and it wasn't that it was an ego or cockiness thing. It was just a fundamental foundation in taking care of your business.
Right.
And I feel like it rubbed off on my teammates. We had some pretty good teammates that went on. Kenny Harvey was one, a couple years behind me. Became an all-star with the Royals. We went to the same high school. We had several guys who played in the big leagues, or rather professionally, at the same time. And a few guys went ahead of me that played in the big leagues that were part of this kind of extended environment. So, some of that's talent, obviously, and some of that's separation, but the mental focus and the way these guys went about their business was the big takeaway.
Right. So let me ask about that. Because of the environment you were in, you got exposed to the mental part. And unfortunately, a lot of kids don't have access to that. So, let me kind of jump ahead a little bit. But with your program 15 and what you're doing now, you are hanging out with a lot of guys in this age group. This doesn't seem to be taught or even a focus. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I think that's a double answer, and I, it's right on time actually with what you were saying. With these guys that we're talking about, and look, granted, we're talking about superstars in baseball. Darryl Strawberry was one of the most talented people ever to walk the earth.
Yeah.
Eric Davis had unbelievable ability and fast twitch and the ability to control his barrel with as much velocity as he had. Chris Brown was a guy who never really quite, got rested and reached his ceiling. And he was a tough exterior guy, was a really sensitive guy underneath. And you could see that in the way he handled, me and other people like me that he was close to, with some discipline and some focus and also some care. And it's the same guy who told me it wasn't good enough to be a star in high school. I had to be be the best in the country. That was the goal. And at the same point, when I pushed back at him, after correcting me like a good uncle would, put me in the car and took me home, drove me home. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's the type of environment that happens. So, those values aren't there today. The earn it mentality is, I think, missing a little bit. I think we've entered into an age where we've desensitized the big leagues for whatever reason, because that was always the goal. And I think we've lowered our sights a little bit in what the goal is.
Yeah.
We've forgotten that nobody cares if you win a championship at 9. And that, the thing that comes out of that is camaraderie when you're 12 and 15 and 16, and the lessons that come for how to win and how to play well and what your value can be to a club are what we should take away. Instead, the trophy is the goal.
Yeah.
And that's something that takes some higher thinking and some ways to get away from. And I feel like, our movement is better. Our movement is working back towards that because we are missing those type of ways to advance your thinking. It's become about, the launch angle instead of understanding that every swing has a launch angle, and it's about how you get there. It's become about throwing hard instead of realizing that guys throw hard anyway. And it's about how you separate and execute that's going to advance you. And those are higher level thinking things that don't necessarily sell real well because they're harder to achieve.
Right.
It's easy to achieve those other things because they're just result oriented, right? You can sit in the cage and hit balls up top of the cage and say, wow, look at my launch angle.
Right.
Can you do that in the game?
Right.
Can you do that in the game? Can you arrive on time and play in the middle of the field? And so I think those are the things that I was taught that were taught universally a little bit in baseball at the time that I came through that we've gotten away from now.
Yeah. Right. I agree. Jeremy, were you a multi-sport guy?
I did, man. I played basketball. I played a little bit of football. My dad was really careful about me playing football because he didn't want me to be a catcher, so he didn't want me to get hurt.
Yeah.
So he recognized early on that it was a problem sometimes with people getting hurt. And I think his deal with that was, I'm a big kid. I was 6 feet tall at 13 years old. I was 6'4" by the time I was 15. Was, hey, man, I got a kid who's got a chance to win baseball ability, and I don't want him to get hurt. So I played freshman football. Ironically, went back and played a little bit of football at New Mexico State before deciding to go back to stay with baseball before the season started. And, played basketball through my sophomore year when my coaches in high school made me make a decision between playing varsity basketball and varsity baseball at the same time. And I chose, and I think it's very, beneficial for athleticism and for brain focus and for a million different things that come with it. Athleticism, body life, freedom, just a million different skill sets that come from playing each game were developed by playing football and basketball and baseball. Those are the three I stuck to, was those three. But what would happen was when baseball season was over, Jeff, I put the baseballs and bats away.
Yeah.
It was about playing football. It was about shooting hoops. And it wasn't about, when I was a kid, I didn't even pick up a bat again, to be honest with you. And that really started in high school until it was time to play varsity baseball. And I needed to prepare myself, about December. And I picked the bat up. And I did it. You know, and then it was, all right, we'll hit a couple times a week. We'll play catch a couple times a week because you don't want your arm to be behind come February.
Right.
That was the thought process. It was never play 12 months a year. And we don't encourage 12 months a year here now, but playing other sports is so vital to focus and energy and love of the game and skills that my dad didn't have it any other way. I was going to play other sports.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I was trying to get at. So with that, obviously this contribute to athleticism. And with the athleticism, you tend to be able to get away with a lot more things than the non-athletic kids. But with you were a great athlete and you had this great foundation because of the environment in which you grew up in. So did you experience any type of struggles going through high school? What was high school like for a guy with the athleticism and the knowledge and understanding that you had?
So, starting out as a freshman, I went to Beverly Hills High, as I said, and there'd been a pretty good player a couple years just ahead of me by the name of Michael Moore, who never made it to the big leagues, but was ultimately a first-round pick of the Dodgers out of UCLA, and a second round out of high school by Toronto. And so there were some standards that were set with some of the guys that were there. And our coach at the time was a big standard guy. You know, there was accountability. He was also a football coach. You know, he was a teacher like many coaches are, you know, and that really translated on the baseball field. So I got to campus, and I played freshman football. I played freshman basketball, but the idea was that I was going to play varsity baseball. And, you know, as soon as I was ready coming out of those other sports. And I ended up spending the year mostly on JV and worked out the varsity a couple of times. And I was still switch hitting at the time. So I was really experimenting with different things. I should have mentioned that. I switch hit because my dad wanted me to get the perspective, the other side of the plate, to be able to train my body. Right?
Okay.
So I did both. By the time I was a sophomore, it was varsity basketball, and it was varsity baseball.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of politics in the community about, you know, a sophomore kid playing ahead of a senior. So I came out of basketball, spent a couple games on JV to kind of get my legs underneath me and get my swing, and went to varsity baseball. And you basically, same thing, the lessons I learned from the guys around me. I had some success, hit over 300 that year, you know, hit some doubles, but it was really one of those things where I felt like I could play with the older kids and do some things. And by the time I was a junior, you know, I ended up setting some records. You know, 25 records at the school, had some state records. You know, had 562 one year, finished second in the state behind Brad Fulmer. We're at 568.
Nice.
You know, these are all things that sound cool right now. At the time, they're just numbers. Like, you don't realize them.
Right.
Because I didn't live into it. There were guys around me that could flat out play where I grew up, and it was just about baseball.
Yeah.
You know, but I became All-State and Cal High Sports and won the league MVP and Triple Crown and All West Side and preseason All-American. And those kind of awards were fun. They were fun.
Yeah.
It was cool being included with the top 33 kids in the country with guys like Scott Ellerton and Paul Konerko and Mark Johnson, and that group was fun to be around. Jim Parquet, who was a former teammate back then, and Randy Wolf, and guys like that. That was the network that it ended up evolving. Chad Moeller was part of that group. You know, he's my catching coordinator now, and you know, he was obviously All-American with the USC, had a long big league career. You know, so being in high school, that was kind of the circuit, and everybody was in that circuit was part of that same group. So it was really about, you know, achieving within that group too. Because you look left to your right, look to your left, look to your right, man. You got guys that can flat out do it, and it made you a better player all the way through.
Awesome. So a successful high school career, and now you're heading to college. What was this transition like for you?
That was interesting. You know, the transition to college baseball, you know, it was the first year of the NCAA clearinghouse for me. So I actually signed a letter of intent to LMU. And went there for a semester. I was eligible to play, and then right before spring season, the NCAA yanked my eligibility for a math class that I'd taken in high school that actually never existed. They had the misread on it.
Huh.
And so I lost my freshman year of eligibility. I had to transfer to Cypress Junior College in Southern California. You know, did my thing there. Played for a very good program with Scott Pickler, Bill Pinkham, you know, James Keller, who's now a special assistant with San Diego, and you know, Ron Hawksinger, who was the perfect players coach. We had guys like Keith Ginner on that team. We had guys like Augie Ojeda on that team. I mean, again, same environment, right? And it was one of those things. I went in there and I played some left field and DH, and played some first base my first year, and swung the bat and hit some home runs and did some damage. But it was a lesson about, another reminder about, hey, you know, don't leave any doubt, right? Leave no doubt in what is going to be you, what is going to be yours. It was a little bit different after my freshman year. I didn't feel like it was quite as challenging as that may say, but my sophomore year, I was, you know, back to the same thing, all league and all state, and, you know, California junior college was when you're all state, you're all American. So there was all those things, and it was fun. Had an opportunity to sign with the Angels after that. Opted to go to New Mexico State, went down there for a year and you know, finished top 5 in the conferences down there, and then started my professional career. So it was a good transition. It was life lesson learning for me. Baseball-wise, there was good talent. You know, Marcus Jones and Rocky Biddle and Dan Reichert and Troy Bloss and, you know, again, a lot of the guys we mentioned that you play against, and so you'd be able to sharpen. It wasn't the professional baseball focus that I'd had at the time, but again, it was a very good learning experience for me in what it took to be a student athlete, which to date is the hardest job that I've ever had in my life, is being a student athlete.
Yeah, no, Jeremy, you're right, man. That's it's tough being a student athlete, trying to juggle school and baseball, but man, I wouldn't have traded it for anything. So let me ask you now about kind of your transition from college baseball to professional baseball. What was that transition like for you?
Well, so for me, I had an interesting road. So I applied for free agency after the fall season of what would have been my senior year. I was 21 years old, and I had another opportunity to sign, and I did not. I went back to college to play football, and ended up getting a concussion. I hurt my ankle in the same day, in 2 days in New Mexico State, and I was like, you know what, this ain't for me. I was going to make the team, but this isn't for me. And went back and just focused on baseball. I applied for free agency, and the commissioner denied it. So I didn't play my senior year in college, and I ended up signing independently with the St. Paul Saints. At the time, J.D. Drew was going through his stuff with the commissioner's office as well. Totally different scope, by the way.
Yeah.
But he was there, and I was there, and we played. And so I'm 21 years old, and the youngest player in the Northern League, which at the time was a high AA, low AAA league. And so now my exposure to professional baseball is guys throwing 94, 95 with plus breaking balls that have some kind of command, that know how to play.
Yeah.
They're obviously not superstars anymore, because that's the point in their life they're at, but they're guys that know how to play. And so you've got a 21-year-old kid coming just out of the Big West Conference, which was a lot of really good tools against guys who know how to pitch. And it took me a little bit of an adjustment, but another learning curve experience that taught me a lot about the thinking part of the game and advancement. And, my career after that, I had some good years. Played in Mexico a little bit, went to spring training a couple times with a couple different clubs, Tampa Bay and Milwaukee. But I figured out early on at that point, about 24 years old, when I'd had a good year, that it wasn't in the cards for me to make it as a major leaguer. It was about grinding it out as far as I could, playing because I had a job, because I still wanted to do it, and learning everything I could to transition to the other side. And so because of that, made some good relationships. The lessons of the past once again surfaced and how to approach it. And when the time was ready to transition, I knew it, was able to walk away.
Interesting. So whenever you got there, this going to professional baseball, the different jump. There's a different set of experiences, a different set of failures. So what did you learn about professional baseball while being in professional baseball? And what did you learn that maybe even helped you into what you're doing now?
What I learned there was that it sounds, a little bit maybe regressive in what the conversation's been so far, but I was reminded again that how hard this game is to do.
Yeah.
It's not good enough to just be good to go where you are. It's not good enough to excel in your bubble. It's such a bigger game. It's such a bigger experience. There's talent everywhere. And if you want to separate yourself and you want to, back to making it yours and leaving no doubt, I mean, the work ethic has to be, you have to find new ways to challenge yourself. You have to find new ways to get better. You have to find different ways to advance. You have to refine the things that you're not doing well and the things that you are. You really have to grow. And professional baseball for me as a player was a humbling experience. Somebody who had an amateur career that was pretty successful. I think it's fair to say that.
Right.
To go into guys that were far ahead of me in how they knew how to play, not ability-wise and raw talent-wise. But, man, you're 21 years old, and you're catching big leaguers every night who know how to pitch, and you're playing on the flagship team in independent baseball at that time, which was the St. Paul Saints. And you've got, guys who come out of that league to go right back to the big leagues, let alone Major League Baseball or minor league baseball.
Yeah.
These guys can play. And so the experience about that was kind of an odd timing, because I guess for most 21-year-olds, you're starting in rookie ball, or maybe you're an A-ball if you sign out of high school, and I had to take that. So it was a challenging experience about how to go to the ballpark every day, about how to prepare, about how to make sure you're ready in the off season, about how to find balance, bus rides, and then of course getting to the ballpark every day and ready to play. And the lessons that were learned there within the game, how to carry yourself in a clubhouse, how to shut your mouth, how to speak when you needed to, the things that taught you humility, along with the nuances of going to the ballpark every day and playing, and knowing that on any given night, if you go 4, it don't mean a whole lot. If you go 4 for 4, it don't mean a whole lot.
Right.
It's another day. That was what that taught me, was consistency, resiliency, and humility.
Nice. Jeremy, one thing that we hear a lot is, everybody thinks they work hard. You being in the game and doing what you're doing now, how do you define working hard? What does hard work mean?
Working hard for me is about doing things every day to advance yourself, and it's not always in the public eye. Matter of fact, most of the best work is done away from the public eye. It's the work that you do when nobody's looking that separates you. And, with us, we have something we call a bar of achievement, right? And the bar of achievement, for me, means when you set a certain standard for yourself every day, you can't allow yourself to go beneath it. And every day is a new level of setting up another bar of achievement, right? And it's something that we use with our players that we have, something that we say to the partner programs around the country, and it's something that I really believe in and internalize. And working hard to me is about working smart. It's about refinement. It's about challenge. And it's about finding your way to make yourself a better finished product than the day began. If you can do that, then you're telling me you're working hard. It's not for show. It's not for visibility. It's not for a pat on the back. It's purely for you. And it's, again, back to that mindset and how you approach it. To play this game, and again, I never played in the NFL or NBA or the NHL or even any other sport out there. To do this game uniquely, it's a global game, and there's always somebody coming for you.
Yeah.
So people forget every time somebody goes out of the game, somebody else comes in. Every time somebody comes in, somebody else has to go out. There's always so many jobs and so many uniforms. It's not promised to you. And so when people work hard, it's when they find those ways to separate themselves and go forward in dynamics that aren't always optimal. People have to lock themselves, if you will, in a closet and find a way to emerge better. There's a player right now at the San Diego Padres who's in the system, the big league camps. It's Josh Naylor. He's from one of our partner programs, the Ontario Blue Jays. And Josh, has always had a bigger frame and a bigger body, thicker body, Mo Vaughn comparison, if you can visualize what that looks like.
Yeah.
And he went to spring training this year, and this is a family I know pretty well. He went to spring training this year looking like a shell of himself, every bit as strong, if not stronger, every bit more athletic, but nobody saw it happen. He did it by himself. He did it in places where he could hide and channel what he wanted to do. That's working hard to me. It's not working hard for coaches. It's not working hard for the camera. It's working hard for you.
Yeah, I agree. It's more than just filming yourself and posting it on Twitter and now I'm grinding and working hard, So Jeremy, let's talk about the preparing part from the player's perspective. We talk about this all the time and we tell kids this, but what does being prepared and having to prepare, what does that mean?
The best part about this game, Geoff, is that that's unique. And everybody's going to have their own process, right?
Right.
It's not something that you can cookie cut. And that's such a beautiful thing for baseball because it's unique that way. What we do need to have, though, is we do need to have a standard to train against that bears out athletic results and skill refinement, right? I don't think we have. I think baseball is a little bit behind other sports in that regard, which kind of addresses a little bit what we're doing with the series. But for preparation is a morning to night thing. During the game, it starts in the clubhouse. It starts with your pre-series meetings. It starts with your pregame work. It starts with whether or not you've been in the gym that day and what you put in your body. It starts with your approach at the ballpark. It starts with the on-deck circle. It starts with the bullpen. It starts with your pregame work in BP. All those things are part of preparation. And while you're developing your own process, your off-season process leads to your in-season process. What time you get to bed? What time you getting up? What's your day look like structure-wise? Are you doing the time that's required? Are you giving your body the right rest? Not just blanket rest, the right rest, right? Are you working the right build-up phases? And so preparation is so unique, but so uniform at the same time that there needs to be this standard where players understand how to get themselves ready and how to be the best way they can. And fortunately, you have to love it. You have to embrace it. And it's all about what's above the neck. If professional baseball tools equal out. There's always a separation point. Tools equal out. People that advance are the ones that are be able to channel it and process it and develop themselves mentally to be able to focus.
Yeah.
When I was playing, and a lot of guys like that same era, you got up in the morning, in the gym by 8, to your next phase of working out, which, for me was the plyometrics, agilities, and fast twitch, weight training after a static lift. Then I went and got my swings in, or I played catch, and then I did my defensive work, and then I hit last. And I'd come through 3 or 4 sets of close, and I'd be done by 5 o'clock. Yeah. Then I go home, be with my family, and I go to bed. That was my training in my off season. And that was my path. And some guys don't need that. Some guys don't need that enforcement. But to me, when I hear, oh, I'm tired. Why are you tired? When I hear that you didn't prepare properly, or that your legs are a little sore, well, why? Did you try something new, or are you just not conditioned right? Yeah. And so I think that preparation is being able to answer all those whys and having the mental focus to push past any roadblocks.
I love it. I love how you talk about it being an all-day thing, because it is, especially if you have the desire to play at higher levels.
Yeah, these kids today think that a lesson, this isn't a blanket statement, but it is a common one. A couple lessons a week is going to get it done, and a couple swings off the tee is going to get it done, and I went to the gym twice a week, and that's not going to get it done. You have to work through it, and you have to build up, and we're getting better with conditioning as a whole. So please, that's not a blanket statement, but it's not about the lesson. It's not about that. It's about the work you do when nobody's looking. The work you do when you're not with your coaches. Coaches weren't around us in the off season. We took care of ourselves. Right. We had the instincts and again, back to that mental game, which is so important. That mental strength to be able to feel our bodies and understand what we were doing, because we paid attention the rest of the way. You can't prepare if you don't know what you're preparing for. And you can't prepare if you're going to go try to play video games all day, or stay out, not getting your rest, or be out in the club. That's not preparation. That's party. That's fun.
Right.
And lots of times, the preparation that it takes isn't a whole lot of fun. You have to make it fun. You have to love to do it. If you don't love to do it, and you're not willing to sacrifice and put the hours in need to be had, and do the difficult work, do what nobody else is willing to do, I promise you somebody else is, and they're going to pass you. So if you don't want to be passed, you need to turn around and find your ways to get yourselves in different gears. And that's preparation, and that's just what it takes, and there's no way around that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I was fortunate enough with this show to be able to talk to guys like Dana Cavalea, Matt Walbeck, Rob Bowen, and a handful of other guys that got to play or be at this highest level on a daily basis. And they all talk about thinking and doing things differently, finding things that work for them and sticking to it. Because the baseball culture tends to gravitate toward the newest and the hottest thing. And that's not what these guys are doing. These guys are doing their own thing. They just know, thyself.
Yeah, these guys are all looking for different ways to be successful. And they're looking for it's a respect for the game that drives it. It's a respect for your peers that drives it. It's a desire that you can't teach, unfortunately, that drives it. And it's a love of doing the work.
Yeah.
When you're a baseball player, for good, bad, or otherwise, when you're a baseball player, or you're a baseball scout, or you're an executive, or you're a coach, you have a tendency to identify with yourself, with the game, because you immerse yourself so far into it.
Yeah.
Because it is that competitive. It is that hard to do. It's an overused, statement, but there's nothing else you can do in this game or in this world where 3 out of 10 is great. I mean, we say it all the time. It's, it's simple, and it's not, I'm not the first person to say that, but if Tom Brady completes 3 out of 10 passes, he doesn't win 6 Super Bowl rings, or 11, or 72, whatever he's got. He didn't do that. You can't, it's just a different game that way. If you miss by a couple of inches or a half an inch as a pitcher with what you're trying to execute in a certain situation, kids are playing looking for that ball 15 rows back.
Yeah.
And that's how good you have to be at it. You can't just wake up and do that. You have to really find ways to separate yourself and channel it and focus and drown out 40,000 people and drown out, drown out the boos, drown out the you can'ts and And any level you play at in professional baseball, it's a job. And when it's a job, you give everything you have to it. Otherwise, why do it?
Awesome. I love it. This is great. This is great stuff right here, folks. So let's jump to your scouting career. What did transition like? Did playing help you? Because based on my understanding of this conversation so far, it sounded like you knew you were going to make this jump to this side of the business during your career. So how did this prepare you for the scouting that you eventually and still do?
Well, my playing career, because of the route I took, was really interesting phases. And a lot of guys have a similar path. And once they're the young guy, then they're kind of with their peers, then they're the older guy, right?
Right.
And so that was kind of where I was at based on certain levels. And it became something where I realized it was, like I said earlier on, and when I finished, it was over. It was just a matter of getting to when that was going to be and finding the right time. And so I tried to learn as much as I could. I watched how guys did things. I asked my managers questions. I dealt with process. I became much more process oriented. And I guess back to lessons that were ingrained in me on process, but more cognizant of what I was doing. It's called a maturity in baseball. I think is what it is.
Yeah.
And when the time came to leave, I just knew one day when I didn't want to do those 8-hour days anymore in the off season. I remember waking up one day and I had a chance to actually go back to camp with an organization, and I didn't want to do it. For what was my mentality? I love playing, but it's just time to do something different.
Yeah.
It was just time. Just a feeling that I had. And so playing the way that I did and being around people that I did, wearing the different uniforms that I did, was very, very fortunate for me in understanding how the front office make decisions, how managers make their lineups out, the politics involved with the game, relationships, how the clubhouse flows, just the ethics of and etiquette of what was needed were just so valuable at that time. So being able to channel that was important to transition. So when I was done playing, I actually did a year as a hitting coach for the Sussex Skyhawks, who are no longer around. They're renamed to the Sussex Miners in the Can-Am League of independent baseball. And I did that, and I did some player procurement and evaluation for the hitters. And my manager at the time was a guy named Brian Draymond, who's now with the White Sox and has been for about 10, 12 years. And he did the pitchers. And so we worked together on figuring out how to evaluate and what was going to work where. And I didn't understand what a 2 was or a 4 was or a 6 was yet.
Yeah.
But I use words like average and plus, and I could understand that as far as how stuff was going to work. So, we brought that in, and the lens was just so different. The eyes were so fast that after spending a year, doing what I was doing, it was clear that scouting was where I was going to begin. The Twins hired me after that, and man, the foundation of scouting I got from Terry Ryan, Mike Radcliffe, the system they had built, with my supervisors, Tim O'Neill and Darren Johnson, who was the scouting director, along with some of the other people they had, like Sean Johnson and Mark Kamoya, Mike Ruth. Those guys were so great. Jack Powell were so great in the education of what it meant to be an evaluator. It's something that I just kind of had a feel for. And I do believe that the guys in the game that are there, they have an innate understanding, and it has to be appreciated. I'm certainly not the only one who's ever had that feel, who's ever had that lifeblood in my veins. There's a lot of good evaluators out there who have done good things. But again, it's about how do you separate yourself, right? It's about how do you learn, how do you process information. And the transition from playing into that role, looking back, while it was difficult as a player trying to fight through, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I wouldn't trade being around that cross-section of people and that upbringing in the game for anything in the world.
Receive a Baseball Awakening decal by subscribing on iTunes and leaving an objective review. To claim your decals, screenshot the review and email it to Geoff@baseballawakening.com. That's GEOFF@baseballawakening.com, and we'll get that your way.
Yeah, so Jeremy, as an evaluator, for the people that are listening, can you talk a little bit about what an evaluator is and what they do?
Well, an evaluator is somebody who is making a decision on a player, in this sense, and that means that's a whole lot of things, man. That's identifying raw tools, and that's understanding instincts, and that's seeing makeup, and that is trying to forecast what all of those things mean with skills and how that's going to translate into evolution of a player, into what that's going to be later on. If a player is done developing right now, and let's say he's 18 years old, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
If a player is done developing at 21, it's time to move on.
Right.
From the lens that we have. But players develop in the big leagues. And it's a scout named Greg Orr who taught me something. He asked me a question one time. He said, we're sitting in Frisco, Texas, doing AA coverage. And he says to me, when's a player reach the ceiling? And I said, when he's done developing. And the reality is, as a scout and an evaluator, you have to be able to forecast all of that. You have to use all the information available to you, objective, which is statistical, analytical. Certainly now there's better technology for that, to do that. There's different ways of looking at the game that need to be incorporated into what we do. And then there's subjective route, what you see with your eyes to complete the picture. They both work together. An evaluator takes all of those things into account to decide and define his best guesstimation. And people like to use that word, but it's an educated guess. No matter what information is in front of you, it's an educated guess what it is. Because there's so many variables that go with that. To figure out what a player is going to be in the end, to assign a value to that player, whether it's college or pro, and to watch that player achieve. And that's what evaluators do.
Awesome. So with your program 15, you advise guys where they are at and what they need to do. So at what age, if a kid really wants to play baseball, at what age does he need to start training differently and really start to develop?
Well, there's different phases of it. Development from let's say the ages of 8 to 12 is about playing catch, and it's about having fun, and it's about having success, right? And experiencing some failure. Those are all development things because they develop the mental part of it.
Right.
They develop the desire. It's about playing other sports. It's about being in your community. You only get one shot to be a kid, and these kids need to be kids because they're still, the reality is 99.9% of these guys aren't going to play in the big leagues.
Right.
That's the reality.
Right.
And so teaching them life lessons in this is all part of development. And so that's part of it. When it comes to more refined, advanced development, beyond the swing, you know what? I mean, that can enter at any point when the player tells you he's ready. But for me, that's really 13 years old when the transition to a bigger diamond starts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the area that we start. In the Dominican Republic and Latin America, they start identifying these kids at about 12 and 13 years old. And while that's really early for what we're used to over here, the reason being is because bodies begin to change. And players begin to show you more of who they can be. And focus begins to sharpen naturally as your brain begins to mature, right? So if a kid wants to play and he's got better focus, you can see that. If he doesn't want to play, you can see that too. And so that is when you're trying to really pick that up for me is 13 and 14 and use evaluations with that for development advancement. I'm a big proponent. I had a conversation this morning with a major league club, and we talked about scouting and development working together, which, years ago was a common thing. That I don't believe development works without scouting.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is scouting's job is to have that vision. Development's job is to make that vision reality. And both sides are evaluators, but development needs to be progressive instead of reactive. And scouting helps that along. So the age you can really start to put all that together is 13 and 14. And then of course you can see incremental markers all the way up through whenever they're done, whenever they reach their ceiling, into what that looks like.
Yeah, so if I'm a young guy listening to this and I'm realizing, crap, I need to kind of start working on developing, how do I know who to go to, who to trust? What do I need to look for and understand? How do I start the process?
You know what, man, 5 years ago I would have said that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And today I'm going to say it's quite simply the $15 billion question because, it seems like every time I turn around, people are profiting on a gimmick.
Yeah.
And a lot of people won't say that. I'll say it.
Yeah.
And I don't, there's people on Twitter I have on mute.
Yeah.
Because I'm not interested in seeing what they're saying because it's a gimmick.
Right.
Half the time. You guys, we can talk about raw power and raw velocity. We kind of talked about it earlier. And I'm backing into the answer this way. We can talk about raw power, we talk about velocity, and that's all well and good. But if you can't play, it don't matter. It don't matter because otherwise you got to get the ball 500 feet at 5 o'clock. If you have huge raw power and if you can't arrive on time in the game, man, that don't mean anything. It just doesn't. So you need to find, when people are looking for who to trust, it doesn't, I would love to say resume matters, because I do think that the experiences that you get from a player and as a coach and as a scout, they separate you because they're advanced thinking experiences. There's a lot of guys that can't see the other side of it. And there's a lot of guys that have never played an inning. I think that you need to find people. You need to really, when you're talking about investing your time and investing your money into somebody, which is really what we're talking about here, into how to go ahead and advance, whether it's a program or whether it's a person. This person and program has to have your best interest at heart as a player. Otherwise, they're always going to sell you short.
Right.
It has to be about you as a player and your growth. Now, it's great to win with that banner. We have programs like NorCal, Scorpions Baseball, and Trombley, and US Elite, and it goes on, right? Next Level, it's tons of programs that work with us. We're fortunate to work with, whose vision really is the player, and they play under the banner. And it's about helping that player achieve and move on. It's about understanding that you build tools first and skills refine along the way. And if somebody has an understanding of process, somebody has an understanding of the value of a consistent hard contact, or the value of consistent contact at one point, and understanding what exit velocities really mean, well, that's who you want to work with. If somebody understands that how to build arm strength at the right time, how to build a delivery, how to introduce a breaking ball, you can tell by talking to them. People don't stay with coaches all the way along, Geoff, because coaches are good at different spots. Right. Some coaches are good at 13 and 14. Some coaches are good in the big leagues. And there's a lot of guys in the middle and between that are good at those areas because they arrive at the right time. So when you're looking for a development opportunity in an organization and a person, that's how you do it. You have to listen to what they have to say and watch them execute it when it comes to teaching your player things that are going to get game time results, not Twitter results, game time results.
Yeah, Jeremy, you said something that I would love for you to clear up for the people that are listening. You said tools first, skills second. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So tools, and thank you for asking that, because that's a debate that we have.
Yeah.
Tools and skills are entirely different. Okay, I heard somebody say the other day, talking about how everybody has the same skills in the big leagues, and he talked about raw power, and he talked about arm strength, and okay, those are tools. So
right.
The 5 tools of baseball are raw power, arm strength, the hit tool, right? Whether or not you can hit,
right.
defense, and foot speed. Those are 5 tools. Okay? 6 tools, obviously, mental. Skills are the execution of those tools. Can you command your velocity? Do you have a breaking ball? Can you pitch? Can you execute the ground ball or the routine ground ball route? Can you track the ball down in the outfield? Can you throw runners out? Can you receive? Those are skills. Can you hit 4 power? Do you have extra bases in you? Those are skills.
Right.
And you can't get to skills without having tools.
Right.
So you have to build tools first, the raw power, the arm strength, to build those things, the swing, the arm strength. And it's funny because we're in an age right now where we're talking about swings and throwing as hitting and pitching, and they couldn't be more different.
Right.
Swinging and throwing is the foundation to get to hitting and pitching. And so when you're separating that, things we like to say is tools get you noticed, skills get you contracts.
Nice.
So on the beginning side, tools is what you want to focus on. Those 5: raw power, arm strength, foot speed, defense, and hitability, or the ability to hit. The next skills are how you execute those things. And so you need to build tools first to get to the execution.
Awesome. Good information there. So when you go and watch a player, a hitter, let's go say you evaluate a hitter, and you see a guy with great tools, but the skills, the approach, and the understanding of how to hit part, you could tell a guy, hey, you look good, but man, you have no clue what you're doing.
Yeah.
What's that conversation like?
We have conversations like that daily, Geoff, and
yeah.
There's guys that are in the big leagues on talent that still don't know what they're doing because it's about how to play there. Right. So everywhere you're at, you're back to that thinking part. It's about how to play where you are. You have to master where you are before you can advance. And we've gotten away from that in for several reasons, and all of them are too long to go into today. But some of it's money, some of it is instant feedback and the have to have it now mentality. But you have to pull a player aside and say, look, this is what we're doing, and this is where we're trying to go, and this is how we're going to get there. If the player doesn't buy into that, then the player's just not going to get there.
Right.
And ultimately, he has to look himself in the mirror. And I'm not saying there's a one panacea and that every coach is right about everything.
Sure.
But if you don't have to provide a player a roadmap, then the player can't handle it, and the player has to be receptive. Communication is a two-way street. You got to be able to tell them, and they got to be able to listen. And they got to be able to give you feedback on what's working. You got to be able to recognize, and you got to be able to adjust. And all of that is communication, presentation, understanding of knowledge, validity. These are all things that go into it. And if you can find the right combination, the truly special player development people are the ones that have enough humility to look within themselves and to find different ways to communicate messages to different players that are never unique, never going to be the same. They're always going to be unique because no two players are the same. When you get to that point, you've done something pretty good.
Awesome. Jeremy, can you talk a little bit about the Program 15 and the Future Stars Series and kind of what you guys are doing over there?
So, the name Program 15, when I started working with some pro guys, when I left, scouting with Seattle, we needed to call it something. And, we go back to that story that I told you about how I grew up.
Right.
And they called it the program. And so rather than, there's only one program, right? So I didn't know what to call it. I mean, I'm not a big name guy. To me, it's just about them, helping them. So for me, I called it the program, or called it program. And then to kind of carry it forward with their legacy, I put my jersey number on it, which was 15.
Nice.
So that's where you get Program 15 from. Program 15 is the brains, it is the personnel, it is the system, it is the formula of professional experience, development, scouting, executives, all coming together for one common goal to reproduce and advance what a progressive major league organization looks like today for the youth players. And we do that by working with different partner programs like the ones I mentioned earlier and many more that have organizations in their city. So we don't have teams. We have the personnel and the thought process to evaluate, to analyze, to bring things together that make sense to help players advance. Truly credible sources and truly progressive people that understand are always evolving to make things better. That's Program 15. Our creation is the Future Stars Series, and New Balance has gotten involved with the Future Stars Series and with Program 15 to allow us to name us the global player identification development group. And what that means is that all the events that New Balance has, all the things that we do, our partnerships, our partner events, people we work with, and the ones we execute ourselves, these different phases are called the Future Stars Series. And it's been around for a couple of years. We founded Program 15 November 2015. We founded the Future Stars Series in, what became the Future Stars Series in March or February, actually, of 2016. And New Balance gave it the green light in July of 2016 and announced in September. So we're really only 2 years old with the Future Stars Series.
Yeah.
It's sports science-based. It is feedback-based. It is development-based. It is progressive-based. We were fortunate to have good relationships and see some kids get to school. We were fortunate to have some first-round draft picks and some players come through our series that have been drafted from our signature event, which is called International Week, which is a whole other, monster in itself, with world players versus U.S.-born players. And it's kind of this amalgamation of events and people coming together for something better. It's truly gratifying to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I remember when you started kind of promoting it and seeing how fast it's blown up. Pretty amazing what you guys are doing over there. And I got to figure out how I can be a part of this somehow. But anyway, with the Program 15, you guys are evaluating players, and then you're giving them access to this scouting report. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, we're giving them a pretty comprehensive evaluation that, it's a Major League Scouting report. It has, some vision in there. It has psych testing in there. It has some analytics in there, some gameplay stuff, some raw data. It has athletic assessment. It's pretty comprehensive. And, without giving away too much of the formula, the players get all this information. We've got 20-plus Major League clubs we're working with that are advising. That's pretty public knowledge. I'm ecstatic to say we're the only ones that have that. It's the Major League clubs getting actively involved. Recently we started now, working with Tyrone Brooks and the Major League Baseball Diversity Pipeline with some of their intern candidates to go back to Major League Baseball and take jobs and be in organizations and progress. And that'll start this summer with 8 candidates that we have working with us and our scouts and our personnel, and some guys will be directly with me on how to do this. And it's creating a system, for anywhere from dirtbag baseball and impact, baseball and those events, to give our players a platform to train, to give players a platform to get better, to give them real feedback, to actually have hands-on development as a cohesive unit, not me versus you, all of us together, and have Major League people help guide this, both current and past, that are doing something for a bigger purpose. So players get all this information, man, provided for them just for participating in these events. You know what the best part about it is? The best part about it is this stuff is all vastly discounted to what's out there. Why? Because we're interested in it. We're not doing it for a dollar.
Right.
There's a business component to all of this, Jeff. Like, you have to have the world revolves that way, and I think everybody can accept that.
Sure.
But you don't have to charge $800 for an event.
Right.
You don't have to do that. I mean, you just don't have. You're going to eliminate a component of society that just can't afford it. It's got nothing to do with good person, bad person, ability level.
Right.
They just can't handle that.
Right.
That's a lot. You got parents spending $10,000, $12,000 a summer, man, to go do this. And if you're in the upper 1%, that's great. But for 99%, that's hard.
Right.
Baseball shouldn't be a game where your paycheck decides if you have a chance to play or not.
Right.
There needs to be a better way to do it. And I feel like we're finding a way to do that. But yes, they get all the benefits of all of that.
I love it. So with the years of evaluating and through the program, let's just start with hitters. What is the common thing that you're seeing with hitters? What are the good and the bad?
The thing I'm seeing with hitters, is a general approach to try to hit the ball in the air constantly. And somehow we've decided that today is the era that we're going to try to drive the baseball. Well, I mean, you know what, man? I mean, kids have played a long time, and we both know that people have been hitting home runs and hitting doubles and line drives forever. Right. So to act like now we're doing it for the first time in the history of baseball, it drives me bananas to watch that. It's actually it's humorous, and it's disrespectful actually to people that went ahead of you if you're teaching it that way.
Yeah.
What I will say from a player standpoint is kids today are not strong enough for the most part to hit home runs at a consistent basis. Their bodies aren't responding. Certainly not when we're teaching it. You know when I learned how to lift the baseball, and Jeff, I had 70 power. I had raw series. I hit the ball 500 feet. Okay, raw power.
Right.
It's just something that God gave me to do.
Right.
But I will tell you that I didn't learn how to truly drive the baseball, at least understand it mentally to drive the baseball, until I was 23 years old.
Right.
I didn't learn it at 14. Yeah, I may have naturally done that. I may have been coached properly in my swing and my mental understanding to have the strength in my body to be that guy. But I was taught how to hit. And players today are thinking about hitting the ball in the air and instead of hitting. And I say that at the same breath, I'm going to tell you the definition of a ball in the air is simply a ball not on the ground.
Right.
That's the definition of a ball in the air. It's not a ball, it's a ball not on the ground. Line drives count. Line drives are legal.
Right.
And if you get to the more analytics you get to, line drives are what you want.
Right.
That's optimal launch angle, and that's consistent contact, and that's playing in the right part of the strike zone, and that indicates balance and rhythm and timing and vision and all the things that you want when you can consistently hit line drives. Home runs will happen.
Right.
And I see kids today and players today focus on hitting the ball at the top of the cage instead of hitting the ball through the pitcher.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you on this, Jeremy. So what are you seeing that are good?
Well, what I see is a more awake approach to trying to drive the baseball. And I know that sounds a little backhanded.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing kids that are trying to do more with their body and challenge themselves to do more. And that is a very good thing. It's being a little misguided right now. But the challenge of trying to get somewhere, I asked a kid last week in North Carolina, I said, how many home runs you got? Like lifetime. He said 0. I said, then why are you hitting 9 pop-ups to center?
Right.
He said, well, I'm trying to drive the baseball. Okay. So the intent to do something that is beyond just make contact is a good thing. And so that's positive, right? And seeing more awareness of whether the approach is misguided or not of having. And that's a really good thing. But, it's just a little misguided. The positive part is that we do see an awakening, if you will, in young hitters, largely because of the availability of information, good, bad, or otherwise, on social media, to try to have a plan. And that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And what about when we talk about pitching?
Man, in pitching, starting with the good thing, obviously, I'm seeing a lot more guys give themselves value by creating the tool of velocity. That's, velocity, it sells, and it's something that immediately attracts you to it. And so that's a good thing. But again, be back to that misguided thing from a negative standpoint. I see bad arm actions. I see kids blowing out early. I see the starter, which is something that used to be revered, taking a back seat because we're developing relievers because everybody's just trying to throw hard. I see the execution of executing the fastball and durability and longevity going away. And it's almost like we've taken these good things that with long toss programs and band work and jobs and things that we can strengthen, even weighted balls. Randy Wolf and I played catch with a weighted ball at 15 years old.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's how we're using them that's wrong.
Right.
It's how we're approaching them that's wrong. It's the emphasis on that as the end-all, be-all that's wrong. And we're losing the art of pitching.
Yeah.
You know what we call a guy that throws hard? We call that good hitting. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, if you got to throw hard and you got a breaking ball and you can execute, that's a tough at bat. That's a tough day. And I think we need to get back to developing pitchers instead of throwers. And we're developing throwers now and calling that pitching. And that's a bad thing.
Right. Let's talk about the 60 time. There's obviously some value to it. But, you kind of hear the internet world and everybody's kind of talking about how useless it is and what the point of it. So can you share with us why the 60 times important? And then kind of share, how is the culture doing in general in terms of developing the 60s?
Well, the 60 times are, they're misguided. People think you want the 60 time because it says something in baseball. But what does it really say? Well, I'll tell you what it says. It says it's athleticism, it's body control, it's how fast you get to your top speed, and how long you can maintain it. There isn't one thing in baseball that you do at 60 yards in a straight line. Not one.
Right.
Yeah, you can do it on the bases, but not in a straight line.
Right.
And you need to measure other things within that. You have to understand why the 6'5" it matters, why the 6'3" matters, why the 6'8" says what it says, right? How the guy's going about it. And you know what? In the 60, you got to train for that.
Yeah.
People need to train for the 60. You can't just come out and run that. So, are we seeing them better? Sure, we're seeing some people run, but we're also seeing some people not. We're seeing, Jeff, is really concerning. If some of these scouting services out there, a guy's running a 7 flat, we're calling him a plus runner.
Ooh.
Average speed.
Yeah.
Average speed.
Yeah.
7 flat is clearly not plus.
Right.
And we're calling that a plus runner because we're trying to oversell something.
Right.
So because of that, we're losing the focus of what it should be. We measure several things within the 60. We measure the 10, we measure the 40, and we measure the 60, and we use all those numbers because the 10 tells us how fast you get to top speed. The 40 is more of an applicable measurement for baseball, really is, and the 60 gives us all the things I mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
So all those things come together to give us a score, give us an understanding of what these players are really doing, and that's the things we measure. Because of training that way, we're seeing improvements in all 3 times because the players understand that first step matters, right? They understand that body control matters. They understand the acceleration matters. And if the players understand that, it's just running. And just running isn't going to give you the time.
Yeah. Jeremy, you mentioned something earlier, and you said it several times throughout the conversation about how important vision was.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I'm a big believer in vision, and it's something that we work on at our place. So can you talk about it a little bit for our listeners? Yeah,
vision is something that it can't be understated. I mean, if you don't have your eyes, you can't hit.
Right.
And you can't play, and you can't pick up a target. And finding those things is so important. It helps you with the spin. It helps you with the read off the barrel. It helps you with the agility, with your agility in your first step. It just really does. It sends your brain different signals. And we're lucky enough to work with some people who have a pretty good understanding of how to evaluate and develop, right? Because remember, evaluation for the sake of developing, not just for pure evaluation.
Yeah.
So we have that, but we make sure that the vision profile is there so that players can sharpen the best way they can, in many different categories, not just one or two.
Nice. So what are your thoughts on the analytics? I'm kind of in the middle. You can go too far either way. and we're seeing a lot of that. Too far either way. So what are your thoughts on the analytics?
I think analytics been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
It's just called stats, and the way that we look at them today is different because of evolution. I think if you're trying to build a club, which I think is really your question, or build a player on analytics alone, you're missing the boat. You can't do it. If you're trying to build, I had, again, same conversation today. You can give me all the numbers you want, but if I can't translate them to a player that makes sense and I can't teach him the right way to execute, it's useless.
Right.
Still a human component in this game. You can't get rid of it. And so I think that we have gone too far one direction when it comes to that in some ways. And one of the biggest concerns is watching people who are analytically inclined tell people who are baseball inclined first that they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
That's absolutely baffling to me that you can give somebody a platform in a game that's been around, by the way, 130 years before this really showed up, 140 years before this showed up, that what happened for 140 years doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, if you're a baseball first guy, to not understand how to evolve and grow and open your mind means you don't have any humility. And this game is a humbling game. If you haven't been humbled yet, you will be.
Yeah.
It's the way it works. And this, to be able to take that step analytically, all of that said, I think is necessary. I think it's been done. I think they exist to give you a deeper look into individual player value. That's why they exist. It's a deeper look into individual player value. And taking that value and making it reality for your benefit is only going to help your club, and it's only going to help your players if you can do it. If you just rely on, say, here's the data, go for it, yeah, that ain't going to work. But if you do it the other way, I think they're of value.
So if I'm listening to this, without calling anyone out, there's so much stuff out there that give us numbers. So if I'm listening to this and say, what number do I pay attention to? And what do I want to develop? What's your advice there?
Well, I would try to develop things that show me value. And exit speeds is a raw score. We use exit velocity. That's a sexy one, right? That's sexy right now. Well, exit velocity is a raw score. That's all it is. It's a raw score. How does it play in a game? Right. What's your consistent exit velocity, right? Where's it applicable? I want to see numbers that show me gameplay. I want to see hard contact and run production situations. I want to see execution with my fastball percentage. I want to know how much I'm chasing out of the zone. I want to see reaction time if I'm a hitter. How do I improve that? Acceleration and deceleration in the hitting zone. Those are the type of analytics and numbers that I want to look at.
Yeah.
If you do those things correctly, then exit speeds and velocity take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're there, right? If you train for exit speed and velocity, you lose the other part of it. And so if I'm a player and I'm trying to train, I want to do things that show me real value because the rest of the part's going to take care of itself. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I agree. So what's the future with your program and with the game in general? What are you seeing in the near future?
Overall, I think the game is in a good place in some ways, and it's not in others. To get away, and obviously, I do analysis on TV for KHIOU in Houston, which is the Astros, right? So I do that, and the game's in a good place, and it's not. The roles have changed a little bit, and that's not necessarily a great thing. We see pitchers going through and multiple transactions and happening in a way that we didn't see it before because we're developing different. Overall, from an excitement standpoint, I think we're in a medium place. I think there's a lot of fans who love to see better pace of play. And what that means is, are we making more content? Doing things that are gameplay oriented instead of waiting for a strikeout or a walk or a home run, which are, of course, the three true outcomes of analytics, right?
Right.
So I think we're in a medium place overall. The future of the game is about to go back the other way, and it's about to get a lot more fun. I say that because all the things we're talking about that are missing today are about to come back. Baseball has course corrected for a long time. Every time everybody, people get on board one direction and the entire industry gets on board, somebody else is going to go the other way. That's how we got here in the first place.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find a different route. And I think that what's going to happen now is that scouting is going to have more of a value, subjective scouting. And makeup is going to separate. And the gameplay part of it's going to be so much more valuable. Not the historical, but the predictive part, right? Because you're going to get paid and you're going to advance on what people think you can do, not what you've already done. Paying on history is over. It's a component. But what you've already done within those games, the deeper look is how you're going to get contracts and how you're going to get paid. And I think when the game gets back to that spot, we're in a good place.
Nice.
For the program and for the series here, Geoff, I'd like to think we're aggressively at the front of the support, because the people that we have here right now, because of the way we're tying all this together. I would like to believe that we are first and foremost putting a program like that together that develops the stars of tomorrow with the proper mindset. You can't do that by yourself. You have to do that collectively. And again, we're fortunate to have really good partners, both in sponsorship with New Balance and Singer and Torch Eyewear and G-Form and Modus and all the partners that are making this, and Phoenix Sports and all the people that are making this, making this possible. The media coverage we've gotten, the relationships, the desire to make something different is catching like fire. So, this is a good thing. We can bring that together. That's great. And of course, the Major League Club support, who is actively in those offices, guiding me with what they want to see, with their feedback and how to tie this together with my own expertise, is creating something that puts us at the forefront of these changes. And that's exciting. It's an exciting time for players. It's an exciting time for evaluators. It's an exciting time for development people. And it's an exciting time for baseball as a whole.
That's awesome. Jeremy, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but, if I wanted to learn more about, what you guys are doing with Program 15 and the Future Star Series, what's the website? How do I find information?
So Twitter, social media, website, right? So the website is futurestarseries.com. It's readily available anywhere. You can find it from anywhere from your phones, futurestarseries.com. And obviously Twitter, we have 3 Twitter handles. We have one for Program 15 that's at Program 15BB. Future Star Series is at FTR STARS series. And then mine, of course, if you want to follow me personally, is at _Jeremy Booth. And you can find information all those places about all our partner programs, about how to get involved, and about how to be part of the series.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, man, I could pick your mind all day long, my friend. But I've learned a lot, so thank you a lot for coming on.
Geoff, I appreciate you having me, man. Appreciate the time and the interest in what we're doing, man. Thanks very much.
I'm Geoff Rottmayer. Thank you for listening to our conversation on the Baseball Awakening podcast. Stay tuned for a recap show sometime this week.